would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the very first exclusive virtual seminar on global resilience, a collaborative effort of Global Workforce Management and MidCat Advisory Services Private Limited, supported by Global Association for Corporate Services. To kick off this event, I would like to introduce CEO and founder at Chartered Institute of Global Workforce Management, USA, Canada, and India. So with the huge round of virtual applause, let's welcome Dr. Shiv Kumar. Over to you.
Thanks, Padma, for the wonderful kickstart and invitation. Good morning, everyone. Today is a Saturday, stunning Saturday. What a great opportunity to collaborate and get all of us together to talk about business resilience. Today is the essential day for where we're going to create huge knowledge sharing and professional networking. The first day, what we're going to have is going to be phenomenal knowledge sharing and a lot of exchange of thoughts. All the attendees, you have an icon of hand there. If you have anything to ask any questions at the end of the panel discussion, you can raise your hand. Also, you can type there, at the questions so that the respective panel members or the moderator will answer your question. That is the rule. And welcome all of you to be part of this virtual seminar on global resilience. We have got eminent speakers and distinguished panelists today to talk about this. We're going to have 3 panel discussions today, and all are very interesting topics. And we are lined up very good speakers from top multinational companies. And I see that 275 registrations so far. Amazing. Thank you all the audience who are registered and were here so far. And I'm sure that we're going to have today, as of now, we have 81 already, and we're looking forward to seeing the rest of them soon. And with this, I welcome you to be part of this virtual seminar on global resilience. Thank you so much for collaborating with MidCat and in association with GSCS. And with this, I hand over control back to the MC. MC, you can have flow properly. I'll just come back to my slide when I'm up. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Shiva. Thank you very much. This is Hema Bisht from MidCat Advisory Services. I head the skill upgradation and workforce development at MidCat. So once again, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. As Dr. Shiva said, we have some very eminent panelists here today, some very experienced professionals here today, and 3 very, very interesting panel discussions coming up. We start with an opening keynote address by General Sudhir Sharma. Let me just give you a very brief introduction to General Sharma. So General Sharma is the chairman of MidCat Advisory Services. He's a highly decorated former Army commander, head of logistics of the Indian Army. He has been a former military attaché to UK and is an alumnus of Staff College, Cambridge, UK, and an MPhil in Defence Strategy. He has been a keynote speaker at leading global fora, at the Global Economic Summit in Switzerland, the Asia Economic Forum, Macau, the Global Arab Summit, and many other events in London, Dubai, Singapore, and other cities. He has also been a defense and strategy expert on primetime TV, including for Times Now and ET Now. So with this, and without further ado, I will now hand over to General Sudhir Sharma. Sir, over to you. General Sharma?
I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you very clearly.
Yeah, I had lost my connection, so my audio, I think, is not working, but can you hear me now, see me now?
We can see you and hear you, General Sharma.
Thank you very much. Thank you much. I thought I lost my connection. Thank you very much, everybody, for getting me on this very exciting platform. And thanks to all of you. And I think we are speaking today on a very, very topical and a very interesting subject. Adversity always provides us an opportunity. In the world wars, women came to the workforce for the first time. And after the World War ended, the women stayed back onto the workforce. The SARS epidemic gave a big boost to e-commerce. And the 9/11 terror attack gave a new dimension to terrorism, homeland security. Similarly, COVID-19 pandemic has catapulted BCM to center stage and right into the boardroom. Business continuity professionals are now the poster boys of good governance. But it also brought into sharp focus the limitations of business continuity and the various tools that we use to manage business continuity. So business continuity, I think, has to reinvent itself, reconfigure if it has to remain relevant in the world which is in a flux. And it's even more fragile than it was before. As I see around myself, I see the risk of war, the risks of pandemics, risk of global change, risks of businesses and economic, banking system failures. So therefore, a large number of risks are around the corner. And we have to relook at how we manage our businesses if we want to remain relevant. While globalization has taken a toll and it's taken a hit, it cannot be put back. Our risks continue to be global and demand a global response. And walls cannot stop you from climate change or any pandemics. I would therefore like to step back a bit from business continuity per se and look at global resilience, which is the new paradigm in the global economic recovery roller coaster. Having learned from its experience, business community is now less forgiving. Companies which do not recover quickly and effectively after disaster risk suffering huge business and reputation loss. Crisis management and business continuity now go hand in hand. And the desired time to be up and running is now very much less. So therefore, we as professionals will have to ensure that our business recovers very quickly now than in the past. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, resilience is the next evolutionary phase of business continuity. Resilience helps businesses take continuity principles out of their silos and integrate disaster management, business continuity, emergency preparedness into one coordinated and a seamless response system by which you are able to come back into working order very quickly. We have two types of resilience: organizational resilience and operational resilience. Organizational resilience relates to the resilience of the entire organization, from the people, process, the culture and the infrastructure, everything. While operational resilience means the subset of organizational resilience, which is like a assembly line or a studio in a big places can do so. Now, resilience focuses not just on how to get back business after something but goes wrong, but on how to business get positioned to protect the brand equity, resources and staff from threat and risk. Recognizing that business operate in an environment of continuous change, resilience must focus on how to preserve values in this complex environment. I was telling you that while we look at globalization as on the retreat, but business resilience and global resilience cannot be done unless we strengthen our global institutions once again. I will share with you that countries which looked at WHO and followed its guidelines better came out of the pandemic better than those countries which tried to chart their own course. I therefore would like to look at all of you and say that business resilience and global resilience is the new mantra for business continuity managers, and all of us who are in this profession must relook and redesign ourselves so that we are able to go a notch higher than pure business continuity and build together an overall business resilience framework where business continuity also becomes a part of it and disaster recovery also becomes a part of it. I don't want to stand too much between you and a very long day ahead of you, and I want to stick to my time as given to me, and therefore I hand over now to the organizers and thank you for allowing me to speak this. I'll say once again that business continuity and global resilience has come center stage and is the most important factor now as we go forward and recover from the pandemic and prepare for future pandemics or any threats. Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Hima.
Thank you, General Sharma, for giving us the benefit of your experience and thoughts on organizational and operational resilience. As you said, adversity creates opportunity, and business continuity has to reinvent and reconfigure. So we do have a panel discussion coming up on the business continuity and lessons learned post COVID-19. But before that, Dr. Shiva, I'll just hand over to you for a bit to say a few words on GWFM and also introduce MidCat as well, which Pawan will do for us. So over to you, Dr. Shiva.
Thanks, thanks, Lieutenant General, Sudhi Sharma, for your insightful keynote. Great to have you with us today, and your keynote has really been insightful for the audience and also for the rest of the speakers. All right, thanks everyone for getting GWFM into the platform now. Hi everyone. Again, I see that the 99 audience attendees so far, including the speakers. I mean, I see that the attendees numbers are growing. Looking forward to seeing the rest of the people. Okay, to talk about GWFM. WFM is a function. In fact, when I worked in companies like CGI, Wipro, HCL, IBM for a long time, and then Accenture, and I was in Sodexo. I was heading the country for workforce management and talent management. So we had a G. G is something where we're not confining our business only to India or to country. We want to expand. So that's when we got an opportunity to reach out to global market. In fact, that really whatever we dreamt and whatever we thought really worked very well, and we were able to register in Canada and also in the US, and we have base over there, and it's absolutely Make in India forum, and very niche, and we're one of the biggest players in workforce management platform. Since last 6 years, we started this journey. We started with 40 to 50 people of like-minded friends. It's like a Toastmaster club. We joined together in one B school and started with this, and started growing. And we didn't know that it's going to grow very big. Trust me, today we have 20,000 HR and WFM professionals put together in this group worldwide. And in Asia Pac, we have 7,000, and rest of the professionals are from rest of the world. And we have hosted more than 65 events so far. And very interestingly, we're the first one to dedicate WFM Professionals Day, World's WFM Professionals Day, which is something that we call this as an annual day, or kind of our anniversary. In fact, we thought of will dedicate this to the WFM professionals. Trust me, WFM professionals worldwide is more than 5.5 lakhs, as per the estimation done in the last month. And we are one of the fastest growing professional forums in India, and also like worldwide. What we do is we do events like roundtable, webinars, and hackathons. We are the first one to come out with the management hackathon in the country. In fact, the management, hackathons were confined to only the technical products or the engineering products related. But we are the first one to come out with the management hackathon. We got together all the management professionals in the companies like ThoughtWorks, Informatica, and a couple of other companies that we gathered around 100 people and used the design thinking process to get all the people with the problem, and we tried solving the business problems. So we do hackathons very especially, and we have been doing CXOs interviews, and we are awarding body for best practices and best tools in WFM. In fact, recently we awarded companies like IBM, Sutherlands, Concentrix, and KPMG, and a lot of big companies have been participating, and we have a base of 20,000 people worldwide. We do interviews, and also we converse with the thought leaders and sharing the knowledge. All that GWFM is in global workforce management is creating world-class knowledge sharing and professional network platform. And also we have publications that, we publish white papers, reports, and trends and newsletters, and also magazine. And very interestingly, we have come out with a maturity model of our own. Someone is with some noise, probably someone could mute their audio. That will be helpful. So maturity model, you would have heard about PMI has got CMMI, right? PCMM. And if you look at the contact center, COPC has got standards as far as quality is concerned, whereas GWFM is first time coming out of the maturity model within the workforce management quality standards. We have 5 levels where we're going to standardize. We are already in pilot now. This is going to be launched from January 2020 onwards. Also, we have tied up with universities. We are skilling and upskilling WFM professionals and also management people in the mid-level and also senior level. And also we do consulting and very importantly, GWFM has got Innovation Center. We have Design Innovation Center, and we welcome companies to take up your research, work on the pilot model, following the design thinking pattern. We also provide very high-level mentoring and coaching facilities, and anyone who's interested in to become a mentor or coach can connect with us. And that's about GWFM. In fact, GWFM and MidCat got together to launch program. In fact, very soon we're going to talk about that, where we're going to have a program for the manager level and also for the university graduates, as far as business continuity process and management, BCM certification program, which we have launched, and we're going to launch it today. And so whoever take up the program, they're going to get 2 certificates. So one is that from Canada, another one is from US. So which is going to be joint certification. This certification has a lot of value in terms of upskilling, and also we have Institute of Global Workforce Management, South Carolina. This is exactly like a whole business school, or in Canada we are we're like a big institute, so highly recognized one. We can process the visa for Canada. So that is the distinct value they would get if they take up the program, which is launched by GWFM and MidCat. So with this, let me not take much of time. I'm going to share the social media links for GWFM and also MidCat. Please join us, know us, what we do, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the video of this program is going to be uploaded very soon there. With this, I take pride and opportunity to welcome again all of you, and let's kickstart this momentum and start the rest of the sessions today. Thank you so much for taking your time out on Saturdays, and I thank all the distinguished speakers and panelists to have this. I thank MidCat and GSS for collaborating with this event. Let's make this as insightful and knowledge-sharing seminar. With this, I conclude the GWFM presentation. Thank you so much. Stay with us. Looking forward to having great panel discussions ahead. With this, I hand over control to Hima.
Thank you, Dr. Shiva. So now also for a few words about MidCat Advisory Services. But before that, this introduction will be given to you by Pawan Desai, co-founder and CEO of MidCat Advisory Services. Let me introduce you to Pawan. Pawan is one of the industry's leading experts in cybersecurity intelligence and business continuity. He has 2.5 decades of experience with leading global organizations spanning across Asia and Africa. A distinguished naval officer, Pawan led information security and business continuity at one of India's leading companies before co-founding MidCat. He was also selected to be by the US Department for International Security Program organized by the State Department. He was shortlisted for Consultant of the Year award by the BCI UK. And he also speaks at leading global conferences, including Horasis, Duty of Care, OSAC, ACES, etc. He was the secretary of the ACES Mumbai chapter ACES is one of the world's leading security professionals network, and the Mumbai chapter is one of its largest. Pawan is also going to be moderating the first panel discussion that we have on the future of business continuity post lessons learned from COVID-19. So, we're going to try to understand how organizations have reacted to COVID-19, were they adequately prepared, and can we say that, lessons have been learned for future Black Swan events, or is it a paradox saying Black Swan and preparation in the same breath? But anyways, we're going to try to understand in this session more about the lessons learned and whether, BCP was just planning done for compliance, or whether going forward, conventional business continuity focus is going to be changing, evolving, adapting, and be more strengthened, right? So we have some very eminent panelists on this panel discussion, which is going to be moderated, like I said, by Pawan Desai. And so before that, Pawan, I'll hand over to you to say a few words about Midcat Advisory Services and then lead on into the panel discussion. A very, very warm welcome to you, Pawan. It's wonderful to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I hope I'm visible and audible.
You're visible and audible. Good to go.
Yeah, thanks. So very quickly, I'll just not take much time. We're running slightly late, so it's my responsibility to get things on track and be on time. So very quickly about Midcat Advisory, we are a consulting company, just finished 10 years last year, operating in entire Asia Pacific on 3 spaces of consulting, technology, and services. And I think I'll not get into details of Midcat Advisory. You can always connect with us. I'll straight away get into the panel discussion part of it. So, Hima, can you just quickly move to the next slide, please?
Is handling the slides. So Dr. Shiva is presenting.
Can you just move on? Next one, please. So what I'll do is, I think,
so we can
So I think the topic is the future of business continuity. I think you must have attended, very eminent participants. You must have attended so many seminars in which talk about we have a problem. So I think we are not going to talk about the problem, but we are going to talk about what is the future. What have we learned from these incidents in last 6 months? How have we coped up with it? And what is the future looks like? And we have a very, very eminent panel. Let me introduce the panel to you. Shiva, next slides, please. Next one, yes. We have C.T. Sadanandan, extremely experienced in this domain. He is the Vice President and Head of Corporate Services, Business Continuity and CSR at Tata Communications. I think there are no better person than him to talk about this topic, because he handles wide range, right from CSR to facilities to business continuity. It's a very, very large portfolio for CSR, and as you know, Tata Communication manages so many countries, and he has a huge experience from varied angles. He is an alumni of IIM Bangalore, also has spent almost his entire prior to the corporate life in Army, so comes with huge experience. Very warm welcome to C.T. Sadanandan. The next slide, please. Dr. Shiva. Yeah, I think no need to even introduce Neeti. I think she's one of the most experienced, business continuity professional currently available in the country. I think more than 2 decades of experience in that. I think she manages currently the largest command center, if I'm not wrong. I think manages over 60 countries. Please correct me, Neeti, if I'm wrong in your session, which is being live monitored by her. I think one of the very eminent BCM professional, also have worked with CSC, IBM, Bennett Coleman, Nortel Networks, and HP prior to this. Currently, she is the group leader, crisis management and business resiliency for Concentrix, which is there. Very warm welcome, Neeti. Next, please.
May I just interrupt at this point to ask all the panelists to switch on their videos as you're being introduced, and you can keep your video and audio on while the panel discussion is on. Thanks, Neeti. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Then we have Vivek Tiwari, again 2.5 decades of experience, earlier with CISF, but after that he has worked with all the backbone industry. So he has worked with Uninor, which is the telecom. He is now working with Indigo, which is the backbone of the entire travel management across the country. Again, a very vastly experienced person and a good combination of physical security, vigilance, geopolitical risk, and business resiliency. So we look forward for your insights when it comes to we typically get insights from ITAS, banking industry a lot. So Vivek, we would look forward for more insights from other industries. Very warm welcome, Vivek, to the panel. Next we have, I think the slide has changed. Yes, is it Puneet? Yeah, Puneet, again, very vastly experienced. He brings his experience more from the consulting segment. He is the partner at PwC, manages the entire due diligence practice for them. Again, vastly experienced from handling business continuity, crisis management programs for various industries. I have a personal experience of working with him, one of the best professionals which I have ever worked with on that, and you will see why I'm saying that when he speaks about his experiences. Very warm welcome, Puneet, to this seminar. Right, and last but not least, we have Padma with us. Padma, again, highly experienced BCM professional, almost 2 decades of experience. She has worked with companies like VMware, Thomson Reuters, and GSK. Currently, she is the senior consultant at Goresco Solutions, one of the leading BCM consulting companies in India. Also, she has done her BCom and costing taxation. So she comes from the finance, different background of BCM. She is not typically Army or a CSF background. She has a very different, very calculative mind. So we'll see what she has to share her experience on. So very warm welcome to all the panelists. I will not like to set the stage. The stage has been set by Jan Sharma and Dr. Shiva. I'll straight away get into the session on getting into it. Straight away start with C.T. Sadanandan on that. Yes, we know there is a problem. We know the problem is big. It is not going to go away very, very quickly. So how do you see, what are the lessons learned, and how do you see all the functions of resiliency, intelligence, security, and cyber security, all which has come together in past 5 months? What are the lessons learned, and how have they come together? And what do you see? How do we go from here? All to you, Siri sir.
Thanks once again, Pawan, and happy to be here among all the distinguished panelists. And thanks for having me here. And quickly to get into the specific question from Pawan, what we really need to look at is that what we learned from this experience. Essentially, I'm not going back to say that what COVID was and what challenges that posed on all of us and the organizations. All of us are well aware of it. What we learned from it is most important at this point in time. So just to give a context as to what experience I can share with you. So I come from an organization which provides infrastructure for digital enablement, which means the conference right now we are having is probably supported by the organization that I work in. We are one among the world's top 5 ISP providers. We operate from across the world. We connect continents and connect businesses and people. Now, in a scenario which was so unprecedented and unimagined, you can imagine the kind of complexity and enormity that would have come on us to ensure that we need to continue the business as usual. Now, why is it required? One, of course, is that we have to ensure our business continues, but then we are also enablers of other businesses. So my customer stakeholders' business continuity depended largely on our being able to run our business well. So this is the context that I am coming from. Now, when the whole situation came into us, and what we really looked at is that how can we actually as quickly and as fast and in a robust manner respond to this. And then we realized that the conventional operational based, single incident, single location, shorter duration based business continuity is not the answer. We really needed an integrated approach to this, which included every element of the organization. So here is a situation where the entire population of the employees could be affected, the stakeholders, the enablers, the service providers, extended arms, which runs your business can be impacted. Then how do we then ensure that we manage the situation in a manner that it does not have negative fallout on your business and your stakeholders' business? Now, we clearly, I'm going back to the military, principles of clearly stating the aim first before you, get into, managing a situation like this. So we clearly defined our overall goal that people's safety first. How do we ensure our people's safety, and which then translate into our operations and business continuity, and that translates into our stakeholders' business and operational continuity. So that is the whole concept that we started with, and then we realized that it cannot just be run only by the business continuity team. So we had a global business continuity task force, which is about 30 members, right, with the oversight from the CEO and the global management committee. That is the overall concept that we applied to manage the situation. Now, what are the learnings from this? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that this is going to be a reality of situations like this, clear VUCA situations, volatile, uncertain. We don't know what is the next, incident going to be within the COVID scenario, and what other incident can also, sort of exacerbate the whole problem of managing the business continuity. We have had cyclones, we have had larger power outages. So all that we have now realized that a much better integrated focus is required, where every element of the business plays its role, whether it be the information security to ensure the integrity of your VPNs, the human resources to ensure the safety and welfare of your employees, and the supply chain management, which connects with the enablers that you depend on, and of course the customer success management or the sales group, which connects with our customers to ensure their business continuity. So the major learning straight away is that the business continuity cannot be managed in the traditional manner. It can no more be a tick in the box, and it needs to have a much wider influence, and it definitely has a much wider and deeper impact on the organization. So that's all I wanted to share, Pawan.
I think very, very, very nicely summarized. Thanks, Siri sir. I think let me just move on to Vivek from here. A lot of people say, a lot of industry are saying, yes, COVID has reduced the business, it has impacted us, but you are in an industry which has actually come to a standstill in certain manners, kind of thing. So can we let us know, as an industry, how badly it is really impacted, and how do you see the future of this whole thing, and how it is going to be, how the future looks like?
Thanks, Pawan. I'll just quote certain figures to give you an idea about the enormity of the situation which the industry is facing. I mean, if I put it bluntly, it's really like staring down the barrel. And we talk of black swan events. It really has been a black swan, which has kind of hit not only aviation. It's an ecosystem where it's in a very closely interlinked ecosystem. So you talk of the entire travel industry, you talk of the tourism industry, you talk of the hospitality industry, and aviation is kind of a part of it. Somewhere maybe something which determines what follows next. I'll just quote you certain figures. So these are projections. It says that in 2020 the expected passenger loss is close to 3,000 million. globally. The losses in gross passenger operating revenue in 2020 to airlines could be as high as 400 billion in the worst case scenario, and in the best case scenario, close to 350 billion US dollars.
Yeah, you are talking about
the gross passenger operating revenue loss. I mean, had things been normal, these losses wouldn't have been there. 100 billion US dollar is the projected loss in terms of operating revenue for airports. If you talk of the entire tourism revenue loss in 2020, it's projected to be somewhere between the range of 1100 to 1300 billion US dollars, entire tourism industry. Had things been normal, this is the revenue which they would have earned. Now, if you specifically come to airlines, 30% of the airlines globally, in the worst case scenario, could disappear. 40% of aircrafts for large parts of 2020 would remain grounded. If you talk of wide body aircrafts, almost 60% of it will stay grounded for a long time. Now this all presents a very, very scary situation. If you kind of interpolate these figures with what happened earlier, when we had a crisis of big magnitude but localized. 9/11 was still confined to US. You had SARS still confined to certain countries. You had MERS still confined to certain countries. Even then, it took a long time for the industry to get back. For example, if I talk of 9/11, the domestic traffic in US was came back to normal in about 11 months. But the regional traffic, which includes South America also, took about 24 months to come back to normal, the pre-9/11 stage. And the international traffic, everything, it took close to 30 months to come back to. Now, when you talk of aviation in the travel sector, there's also one essential factor which is missing, I'll not say completely, but to a great extent missing elsewhere. This is something where the right to breathe, the right to exist is determined by governments, by the regulators. And there are a whole lot of them, 193 such governments who don't think alike, who don't act alike, whose policies are determined more by their internal reasons. It doesn't have a global outlook, and that is the biggest handicap which the industry faces. I'll just correlate it with the example of the company which I work for. Now, when the lockdown happened, we knew that it's going to end soon, so we proactively approached the government with a plan. We said, fine, we expect that by probably after the second lockdown, you'll open up, and this is our plan. We are ready to operate, and this is what we'll do. Of course, it didn't happen on 4th November. Then we presented a second plan, 4th May, for 15th May. That also didn't happen. Finally, because we were engaging the government and the regulator very forcefully and kind of leading the group of airlines, saying that we need to breathe, we need to exist, for that we need to open up. But it took a lot of time. Now, this is one factor where when you talk of international travel, till the time the skies are open, you just can't do anything about it. So when you talk of resilience, when you talk of business continuity, your own internal thing, it could be the strongest BCM in the world. You could have the best of the minds working on it, the most comprehensive program on resilience which you can make. But till the time these dimensions are taken care of, it will not take you anywhere. The second factor which kind of impacts an industry like travel and tourism very severely is the customer confidence. Now, the previous examples show, and even right now, when we are operating, government has said operate at 60% if you talk of India, domestic. But then if you look at the figures, it's just about 33% as on date. So pre-COVID, there were about, if I talk of February, around 3,500 departures domestic per day were happening. Just about last week, which quoted April 31st figures, we saw that there were 1,150 departures happening in India, just about 1/3. Which means customers have not yet developed that confidence. How do we get that? And that is where a major role can be played by a proactive resilience and BCM programming. So we have been working on a program which says lean, clean, flying machine, basically trying to tell the passenger that air travel is absolutely safe. You can get a virus everywhere, but not inside an aircraft, not inside the confines of an airport, because of the kind of steps which have been taken collectively. But then, as an industry, are we doing enough to project these matches as strongly as we can, as strongly as we should? Because till the time the man comes back to you, you can have n number of aircrafts and they'll keep lying idle. You can have n number of hotels, they can stay just the way, with no occupancy. So are we doing enough? This is one question which industry definitely is asking itself, and I'm sure the lessons would be that we'll start proactively working on it. The second thing which people have started talking about, is how do we manage this ecosystem where you talk of 193 governments globally, and everyone has his own national interest in mind, right from slot allocation to opening up your skies, to having bilateral agreements, so how many flights you will operate, how many flights I'll operate, what kind of taxes I'll charge you, what kind of taxes you'll give me. So a whole lot of small issues which together make the entire thing so complex that just having your internal resilience or VCM programs, or even in a small ecosystem you made certain programs, this is not going to help. So definitely industry is looking at many of these bigger questions, and that way there is the realization that this is not an isolated once in a century event. Things of bigger magnitude could come. What if after 6 months, once things normalize, and there is a second variant, there is a V2 of COVID-19, which probably the vaccine doesn't work. I mean, what happens again? Are you still able to do something about it? So many of these questions are there, Pawan. Answers, I don't think anybody has got them, but yes, there is a definite understanding that we need to work in this direction.
We have advantage. We have panel one, so we should only ask questions. Let the panel two and three answer the questions. So I think we'll leave it to that. So, okay, great point. I think this gives us a huge thing to think about. We always think our BCM plans as internal plans, but we may be the strongest. But if the external things are not there, then what do we do? I think that brings me to maybe come to Puneet, and then I'll go to ladies. I think usually we have ladies first, but here we'll have the strongest candidates at the end on this thing. So let me go to Puneet first, because you see so many industries. So as a service provider, you have advantage of seeing so many different companies, and in the new normal situation, everybody is very wary of new initiatives. What do we do? So how are consulting companies or service providers have a different role? Because conventional things will not work. What worked in earlier this year will not work. So how are we coping up in terms of service provider perspective kind of thing? What has changed for Big Fours and likes of that?
Sure, Pawan. I'll try to answer that to the best of what I can do. But as you put me onto the consultant side of things, right? We generally have facts, and then we have a summarization of those facts to try and see how we really relate to things in the right fashion, right? So facts actually have been already kind of given for one industry by Vivek sir, and his summarization has already been done by CP sir. So my job is much more tougher now to what do I really kind of go back and say. Well, let's look at the lessons learned, right? So from if I have to talk about my practical experiences from my being in the industry, 60 to 70% of my clients, or all of our clients, would probably come back and say, this has not happened to me, so I'm not really worried about it. Well, COVID-19 has kind of changed that entire outlook per se first, right? That thing that it will not happen to me, and it will happen to the big organizations and probably not happen to the small organizations, has kind of gone off the door, right? It doesn't exist anymore, be it small or big. The impact of COVID has been across all domains, all directions, right? So if I have to talk about the lessons learned primarily, or what is it that we would like to change, basics obviously remain intact, but the crisis from the COVID-19 perspective is far from over, I think. I would say things will become a little more worse before they kind of get better. We've already seen that building resilience in organizations and organization DNA has very, very being an important part for a lot of companies, and a lot of companies who've survived this outbreak to this level till today are the ones who had kindly already invested a lot into different areas, right? And where the business continuity function had stepped up and had greatly contributed with speed and full responsibility earlier, and now that results you can see in the ongoing COVID, right? So right from the start, if I have to say, and during the multiple lockdowns, as well as the open up on the unlocks that we are right now following, you would have seen a systematic change in how things really impacted, right? As Vivek sir was saying, the thought was that we'll open up in May, it didn't happen, then it went down further. So things kind of went on to get delayed further and further to kind of, impact us. Right? Now, what do we really do in such situations? And in case the resolution, basically the business continuity function has been in the forefront during this pandemic and has worked really hard, I would say. If I have to look at all my colleagues who are in the industry and in the consulting space, they are the ones who are really, really out there. How do you really create value? How do you get back value? How do you adapt to the changes beyond the pandemic? What kind of things that you need to do to get back things on track faster and in the day-to-day operations are restored. So few things that we've learned that I would like to highlight. I know there is paucity of time. I can talk for hours together here and still not get done. Is that we basically, this has taught us how do you really act swiftly. Have a plan, but have decision makings based on that. So many organizations who did not have a plan were modifying their plans on the fly as the situation was evolving. As a lesson learned, organizations must take this opportunity to look at their business continuity and crisis plans carefully and build awareness across the organizations. Some of them were well evolved on those situations, some of them were not. So that's one of them. We never planned for the unexpected, right? No one imagined the extent of COVID-19 outbreak and the speed at which the global response escalated, right? But if we didn't have the flexibility of plans, we would have probably been more resilient than we came out to be, right? What the lessons that we were, and I'm just kind of talking of the practical 7-8 points that we learned over the last 5 to 6 months, right? We put a crisis communication team in place and drill them regularly, right? We always talked about having these teams, crisis communication with stakeholders, but they were primarily situated from an outside perspective. That what will we talk to our customers? What will you tell our shareholders? But never did we look at it internally. This COVID-19 has kind of taught us that, what we really need to do is do a crisis communication internally, right? We have to be able to communicate, feed off the false information coming up. You could have seen in the first 45 days, WhatsApp was full of news. Now, whether I use the word to say it fake news or not, I don't know, but it was all over it. There was so much of chaos. How do you really get rid of that chaos? By constantly communicating, right? The other areas that we kind of learned our lessons were keeping up and testing with the simulation point, right? If you don't know what will work, it probably will not work, right? So in a crisis, it is incredibly stressful time, and the last thing you want is a response that has to be changed mid-crisis, right? And that is really, really bad in a lot of things. Obviously, we always say that work with experts because people who've been there, done that would know the dynamics of how things need to be put into perspective much better than the others, and that really gets also our learning per se from different companies that we've been associated is digitalization, right? So get digitalized. The current crisis has really put in forefront the role of digitalization, right? Who on earth would have thought that we would have probably been doing this webinar, right, all virtually? All these things were somewhere we would kind of come together in a hotel, do stuff, do a lot of things, and then it would happen, right? All of this is happening digitally. So organizations and companies who were digitally more advanced have been able to keep pace, right? And the disruptions per se has kind of been much lower to those than to the ones who were not digitalized. Right, and last and not the least is to kind of also build an operational resiliency by thinking the approach to the office space, right? So this current pandemic has driven home just how relevant we are not being able to access our premises. Right? There is consensus that remote working will emerge as the new hybrid model. So you will have people doing all of these things. So a total move to if I have to say, a remote working is not sustainable. But many of our clients are planning to build a resilience through relocating 1/3 of their staff off the campus. 1/3 remain on the company premises and 1/3 work remotely, right? So such hybrid models are kind of getting discussed, etc. Per se. and last but not the least is to kind of build a resiliency function, which is shifted more towards the focus of people safety, mental health, and making a well-being a priority, which obviously was always, I would say, neglected in the earlier times, because the challenges that we face would be much more different in the years to come. So I would kind of sum up that.
I think excellent. I think great points, and I think all are in looking at. If you don't digitize, or if you don't have, I think people I've seen companies have been wiped off. They want to still have come to office kind of a mindset, and especially MSME. Still, a lot of companies have that mindset that we still have to. I want to still see you to trust you that you are working from office on that concept.
Absolutely, and that's why I started off by saying the worst is yet to come, because it's still under the carpet, which we have still not seen.
Sure. Thanks, Puneet. I think let me move to Neeti now, and more on that. Yes, you manage huge number of clients globally and huge people internally. So the challenges are many folds what have been discussed in that. What has been your experience of the new avatar of business resiliency or organizational resiliency? What all new jargons which are coming up on that thing? Maybe you can quickly share with us on that.
Certainly, and thanks, Pawan, for that, and good morning, everyone. So it's been an interesting journey right from the time when we started looking at the situation, because we got engaged with things right from the month of January when we saw the first few cases coming in within China. And we started working with our teams in China, and then we saw this thing was spreading, and there were demands coming in from the clients. There were a lot of other things that we were looking at. Clients had their own concerns, and we had to run their business as well. Their businesses were getting impacted. Local clients, international clients, you had all, I would say, to start with, a very chaotic kind of a situation. Why a chaotic situation? Because for a lot of companies, I would say, they had plans. Okay, I'm not saying they didn't build the plans, but they built the plans more for compliance than for a real situation. Or if they built plans, then they were catering to things like, maybe a short-term disruption. You have an earthquake, wow, you have a plan, you can recover. You have a typhoon, that you have a plan, a week kind of a disruption, maybe slight changes here and there, and you can manage the situation. Here we were talking about a situation which had a long-term repercussion. It's going to change the way you are going to work. And that was the situation that we started with. Now, obviously, another thing that came to the fore was that you had people. All your plans were talking about, I'll move my business from site A to site B, a percentage recovery from site A to site B. Maybe in a worst case scenario, I'll expect that the airlines are going to work, and Vivek, that comes from your queue I'm picking up. You're assuming airlines are going to work. So if there's a problem at site A, I move my people to site B, right? Now, there was a new normal, because all the clients that expected that, maybe we'll be able to move people from country A to country B did not factor that if I have a problem in country A, how will country B even allow my people in, right? So there was a sea change, I would say, in the way you had to look at your plans and the way the things really came for you. But yes, the good part is that, we had a head start. We had a head start because we saw things coming in China, where we had a lot of domestic business, a lot of localized business, and there were lessons learned from there. There were things that you factored for your people. There were things that you looked at, at their emotional well-being, their mental well-being. You looked at their health first, and then came to your business next. And then when you were looking at business, you were actually factoring, a work-at-home scenario, that many of your clients never wanted to see ever because of, as you say, the trust issues or whatever. And then we had, like CD sir said that, we had a lot of teams coming together. We broke the silos. And we learned that you can't just run a business continuity function in a silo. You have to factor your security. You have to factor your people solutions. You have to factor your health and safety. You have to factor that, your senior leadership needs some advice at this point of time, and they need someone who can really confidently stand up and say, yes, we can manage the situation and we'll sail through it. The situation was evolving right from, a 4-hour notice in India for a lockdown, right? But yes, were we not prepared for it? Yes, we were prepared for it, because kind of we saw things opening up. We saw some relaxations coming in from TRAI, that you can work from home. You actually started learning more from others than, doing your own things, right? So I think in India, we actually got a good head start basis the experience from other countries. So that was one key learning, I would say. And you were able to kind of scrape through it, right? Now comes, obviously the infrastructure to support. You're talking about, moving people to work at home while you don't even know if your power supply is going to sustain. How many of us do we have complete power backups and a complete telecom infrastructure at home, and we're talking about people working from home, right? So a lot of things were worked upon, a lot of things were talked about. We managed to sail through it. We've been successfully doing that, and I'm glad to say that many organizations like ours, who initially saw some initial challenges, are now well recovered, I would say, because we took some actions well ahead of others, and that's where it gave us a good head start. A few key lessons, I would say, from my perspective, I would say, one factor for a rolling crisis, we faced them, right? We had this pandemic situation going on, and we had typhoons striking us in different countries. If I talk about the North Americas, we had this BLM thing coming up, right? And then you had and you had a lot of learnings there. So few things that I would say is your people are key. You have to factor your planning for different conditions, a combination of plans, adapt to the new normals, right? When it came to a lockdown, we planned for that. When we knew that an unlock situation was coming, you had to get your workplaces in shape to ensure that now this is the new normal, maybe partly working from home and partly working from office. Give that confidence to people that yes, this workplace is also safe for you, possibly more safer than your own home, right? And of course, as I said, throughout this process, that breaking the silos and communicate, tell your people what you're doing and have them on your side so that, you take care of your people and they take care of your business. So I think that's been my part of the learning. I'm sorry if I've taken more time than allocated.
Bang on time, so great. But I think very, very valid inputs. I think I like the communicate part. I think that's, people get complacent, and then the second wave and third wave starts hitting you badly on that.
Absolutely. We're seeing that already, in different countries. In Europe, we're seeing a second wave already here. So
if you see the India numbers, also we see in most of the cities it's already growing. I think that's great. Let's keeping on the people angle of it. I would like to get Padma into the whole thing. How do you see the people aspect of the entire thing and the process aspect of it? And what are the learnings from this whole situation?
Yeah. So there is, I would say, learning in every situation, however bad or however good. And COVID definitely has been an eye-opener in terms of helping people and the organizations to change their mindset. So normally when, based on my experience and the different organizations I've worked and on consulting as well, one thing that I've seen is people feel that these things will never happen to them, and I strongly believe that no risk is a risk until one is really impacted because of it. And today we are speaking so much about COVID because every single living being or you can't hear me?
Yeah. Better.
Yeah. So because COVID has impacted everybody, we see the whole world wake up to the word COVID. You hear COVID everywhere. Even the word carnivorous seems like coronavirus now because that's the impact of COVID that has had on people, right? So I think the virus has definitely made us change our mindset from this will not happen to this too can happen. So we've been struggling with trying to educate people on either life continuity or business continuity, and it has always been a challenge for us, to educate people or to even sell this product, because people feel that I'm doing well, so why would I waste my time and money and people resources on building a business continuity plan? Today, if there is a strike, I know what to do. So today, if there is a bandh, I know what to do. Tomorrow, an actor is being abducted, I know what to do. And we've been glorifying in past incidents which have kind of lasted for about 12 hours, 24 hours, or a maximum of 48 hours. But today, COVID has made us realize that the plans we actually built were not built for real life crisis. The audits that we conducted did not actually make us pioneers in handling a crisis. The tests we conducted were a mere tick in the box. Like Niti was telling, how many of us have even taken our tests seriously? We ask people to work from home for 4 hours, 5 hours. Is that going to tell you how effective your testing is going to be in a real life crisis? And today, when COVID has hit the world, most of the organizations are reacting to the situation rather than responding. We respond to a situation when we are prepared. Like, for example, if there is a fire, the first instance would be for someone to jump, scream, and run out of the place, because we do not know how to handle the fire. Call a fireman, and you know how nicely he plays with the fire and puts it off. So that is the difference that we need to build, from being responsive to being reactive. And we always want to be in a corrective mode. We never want to be preventive. We don't want to be proactive. And all this COVID has changed. And what COVID has greatly taught the organization is to really understand what is more critical during a disaster. Before COVID hit us, everything was critical. Every process was critical. But today we know what exactly is critical. What is it that requires for my organization to be working at MBCO or even at 100%? What is it that really takes for me to stand apart or stand amidst the peril or the ripple effect of this entire crisis? So that is what COVID has taught us. And it has helped us realize that, building plans on historical data is not going to take you anywhere. You could just disappear from this competitive world in no time. You could just disappear and nobody would even know that you existed. And if we are here to stay for the longest time to come, it is for us to jump out of the well and not be like a frog in the well, to realize that this is my world and the waters around me is so calm, and stop swimming in the wrong waters. You have to run against the tide. People have to be educated. Every employee has a responsibility to ensure that his or her organization should be resilient, and he and she has a very strong role to play in it. Of course, leaders have to put in the effort. It has to be a top-down effort, but down the line, every employee is responsible for his or her organization to work effectively. Understand your dependencies very well. You should know your dependencies, my internal dependencies, my external dependencies. If I do not have a due diligence conducted on my vendors, how do I even know that they are going to support my organization in times of crisis? And how many organizations even involve their BC professionals when they are identifying a vendor? They just sign off saying that, okay, this is what our terms and agreements, you have a NDA, you don't disclose, there is, confidentiality, so many things. But one thing is always missing is, what do you do if your own organization is hit by a crisis? How are you going to still render those services to me despite you being in a peril? Do we have kinds of SLAs, an SLA for a BAU, an SLA for a BCP situation? We do not think. And I think COVID has made us realize that the impossible is possible. We have to start looking at that this too can happen, and nobody is exempted from any kind of crisis. The mindsets have to definitely change. Auditors have to push themselves up and start looking at tests which actually gather scenarios that has never impacted an organization before. Make use of mistakes that the others have done.
Sorry, Padma, 30 seconds because we have to get one more this thing from everyone. Okay. But I think very powerful statement you're making.
Yeah. So key learning would be learn from somebody else's mistake. Be sure that your dependencies are strong and are tested, and work on scenarios that your organization has never failed. So that will keep you going, that will keep you sailing. Thank you so much.
Perfect, Padma. I think you summarized it really, really well. So I'll just come back to everyone. Just 30 seconds in your thing. If the future, how does the future look like, and what 3 things we need to do differently? What we have done? Not more than 30 seconds. I'll mute you if you exceed 30 seconds. CT sir.
Okay, I think most of the key lessons have already been brought out by the panelists. So one thing, just to add to what everyone said, just to summarize, we have learned now how to build a plane while we are flying it, right? Now look at that, how we achieved that capability. And I'm not only talking about people who have been able to successfully navigate through this crisis. Many industries, as Vivek was bringing out, have not been able to do because there has not been an opportunity, because the whole, inherent, limitation imposed on them did not enable them to actually test out things. But the rest of us who have been able to sort of, overcome the situation in a reasonably good way, keeping your employees safe, keeping your customers satisfied, keeping your operations running, we really need to look into it, how we built this plane while we were flying, share that with everyone else so that we can still create a much better, much robust framework should we have another crisis like this. And my guess is we will have many like this. And let's say that we are not prepared for that. I don't think if after this situation, we should actually be saying that we are not prepared, right? That's all I wanted to say. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Vivek?
Yeah, so I don't want to say that it's end of the road for the industry, while the situation does look bad, but then there are signs of recovery and it's happening. My recommendations for future would be, yes, this is definitely a biggest learning for the entire industry, and it's not an isolated event. Things like this can happen again, maybe in a different shape, in a different form, but they're bound to happen. It's no longer a movie which you go and see in a theater. It's no longer contagion, it's reality. What can industry do? Like I said earlier, it has to be an all-encompassing approach, particularly for the sectors which I'm talking about. Just your own internal plans will not help. They'll help for a limited nature of crisis. I mean, that's how we have seen BCM so far. It'll work as long as it's a localized disruption, a flood, a burn, a riot, an earthquake kind of thing. But a disruption of this magnitude, it will not work. So the larger ecosystem has to be tackled. Now, how that will be done and when that will happen, I don't have any answers, and I don't think anybody has those answers at the moment, but that definitely requires. What aviation and related industries can also learn from this crisis is the power of technology. There are many inbuilt efficiencies in our system which technology can address. There are a number of vulnerable areas which can be kind of strengthened by use of technology. So that even smaller disruptions don't hit you very badly. This is an opportunity for industry also to look into that and kind of work upon those things. And the third thing, I mean, while being involved in all this, I saw two kind of organizations. I can say there was an organization like ours, which was proactively reaching out to government, to regulators, to everybody, and proposing solutions, many of which later on became a part of policy. And there were also organizations which, even when the government said that, okay, from such and such date you can operate, they took another 15 days to start their operations. So proactive planning and involvement of the top man. I would say that the biggest learning for me is why we could do well in our limited way is because the top management was fully involved. So I would say let the CEO own the BCM. That will itself improve a lot of things. The CEO has to adapt. Yeah. Thanks. So I'll close with that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Puneet.
Yeah. Well, 30 seconds quickly. So I kind of tend to agree, and I would kind of go back. Padma's last point, right? So for me, the future is to incorporate new scenarios and rather gather lessons to better prepare for future crises and adapt these newer plans, right? So I remember taking 4 or 5 years back a scenario of pandemic when we were doing a scenario planning exercise, and they said, you know what, this doesn't happen here, right? So it was kind of parked. But I know that there were people who thought about it that time 5 years back. But I personally also, if I have to ask that time, said probably not really, So when you are looking at it from a client perspective. So that's learning that never. So you have to keep reimagining the possible of a new thing. I would say from a futuristic perspective, we need to reimagine employee experience primarily, because everything that you see today is revolving around the individual, right? And what are we finally got to a place where we've started realizing that it's all about all of us, and it's not just the business numbers that really matter, right? So that philosophy has changed, so which is good. We also I would say evaluate workplaces to mitigate the impact of health related activities. We could also incorporate an agile, a digital, a talent upskilling program, because what we realized in a lot of this, that people who are not upskilled are the ones who are maximum hit, and kind of build an agile workforce to support newer challenges that come in. So I would kind of focus more on the people side, because all other things kind of have come to a standpoint to say if they're not there, it still moves on. So I think I would leave it at that.
Great. Thanks. Neeti?
Neeti, you're not audible.
Neeti, we can't hear you.
Yeah, am I audible now? Yeah, super.
Yes.
So I think I'll go real quick on that one. I would say, a few things that we need to learn. Yes, we still have to have our BCM plan, the good old BCM plan, but keep it simple. Don't make it a 200-page plan that no one will ever refer to. Keep it simple. Keep the functional elements that you can use in real time. Anticipate your people's needs, because they are key to your, all your recoveries. And build your policies around that, involve your people in every step, be it your planning, be it your testing, be it the lessons learned, understand it from them. What is it that they would want to see in such kind of scenarios? Because you'll get a lot of insights there. I would say, let the experts manage the situation. Don't try to be an expert. And that's for some very, very senior people, because, sometimes it's people whose experience you want to gain from, right? So let experts do the job. Communicate, that's my favorite, right? So communicate across levels. Ensure that you're communicating your decisions, your plans and everything across levels. Even the learnings, even the small things that can keep people safe, that's all about communication. So communicate across levels. In fact, for all your stakeholders, it's really important. And then this is the new normal. Let's accept it. So let's adapt to the new working conditions. And there could be changes coming in thereafter as well. I'm not saying this is the final one, but yes, this is here to stay for a while. So adapt to these working conditions, see how we can do things better, even in the current scenarios, I would say. And then plan ahead. Anticipate what is coming ahead of us. Plan ahead. You have to stay ahead of the curve. So I think that's pretty much from my side.
Padma, very quickly.
Yeah. Yes. We need to know our risks. If we are defying or denying, living in denial, then it's a wrong thing. Identify your risks well, accept well, work on your risk appetite so that you know where you stand and where you want to stand. And then train and share your knowledge, because we need more professionals in this world. So keep sharing, keep training, so that you have many more like us and like the stalwarts in the industry. And then realize that a crisis always has a rippling effect. And the ripple effects are sometimes worse than the real crisis. So be prepared, be aware, be cautious, and sail through.
Perfect. I think great points. Let me just take another 30 seconds just to reiterate points which have been shared by them. We need to evolve an integrated approach. Silos are not going to work. I think wider involvement of stakeholders, right from regulator to the clients. Very, very proactive approach. Communicate. I really like that statement. I'm going to use it more, which is there. Also, factor for rolling crisis. So if one plan is not going to work, which is there. People experience, like that, Puneet, people experience, very, very important. That is what it is going to define the future, how we are going to do the work. keep it simple. Keep the plans really, really simple, which is there. And I think also a statement like, it will happen to me. The mindset has changed. So it was always that it can happen to somebody else, but not happen to me. Training, sharing is the key. And I like that to just add that we have moved towards responsiveness rather than being reactive. That is what is the maturity model always talks about. And yes, we hope that the next pandemic or next situation, we are not talking about the corona carnivorous as coronavirus. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to. I think thanks a lot. I think a great learning. I think I've listened to many seminars. I think I learned a lot during this session. Ratna, moving on to you, we have saved 10 minutes. So I think I hope you are able to be able to listen from the next audience also as well as this. Thanks a lot for sparing the time. Great insights. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all. Wow, what an intense session. That was fantastic. Just to reiterate again the learnings from this session and the takeaways, regulations and policies need to have a global outlook. A larger ecosystem needs to be tackled. Think outside the box. Don't just think about your core business and your industry. Digitalization. Get digitalized. You are agile or fragile. One needs resilience models that focus on people well-being. Take care of people. People will take care of your business. Hybrid working models. Break the silos. Whether it's HSE, security, BCM, everybody needs to work together. Factor in a rolling crisis. Every employee plays a strong role in resiliency. So have a top-down approach, understand your dependencies, and communicate across all levels. Be proactive, not reactive. Training and sharing is important. And keep your BCM plans simple. I think these were the learnings and takeaways from this first session. What a fantastic session and what great learning.